Napoleon Bonaparte demanded the impossible from his men. His discipline was legendary, and it was ruthless. Soldiers who disobeyed or deserted could face severe consequences, including summary execution. He was a dictator who held power through fear, a man seemingly willing to sacrifice millions for his own glory. And yet, these same men were fiercely, almost supernaturally, loyal. They followed him into the frozen hell of the Russian winter. They charged headfirst into cannon fire, screaming "Vive l'Empereur!" Even after the disaster in Russia and his exile, the armies sent to stop his return instead defected to his side, cheering his name. This sounds like a contradiction. How does a leader create unbreakable trust through brutal discipline? The answer isn't just charisma. It's in the revolutionary system he built, a system that turned discipline into a strange form of empowerment. This wasn't loyalty in spite of the discipline. It was loyalty because of it. Napoleon's discipline wasn't just about punishment. It was a predictable, transparent, and surprisingly fair system designed to create clarity, empower soldiers, and build a foundation of trust that was unbreakable in battle. It was a system built on three paradoxical pillars: brutal fairness, radical meritocracy, and shared suffering. And understanding this system reveals the core of his genius, not just as a general, but as one of history's greatest leaders of men. To understand the loyalty Napoleon commanded, you first have to understand the world he blew apart. Before the French Revolution, European armies were rigid, aristocratic machines. Officers were nobles who often viewed their own men as scum, motivated only by the lash. Discipline was arbitrary, pay was inconsistent, and soldiers were often expected to survive by looting, a practice that turned local populations into bitter enemies. Napoleon's system was the complete opposite. His discipline was harsh, yes, but it was clear, consistent, and applied to everyone. He issued direct orders stating that pillaging and theft belonged only to the cowardly, and that anyone, officer or soldier, caught looting would be shot without mercy. While this wasn't always perfectly enforced, especially in the disastrous Russian campaign, the official stance was a radical departure. Marshals like Davout and Lannes were known for strictly forbidding looting in their corps. This wasn't just about morals, it was about strategy. Pillaging, Napoleon argued, destroys everything, even the army that practices it, by creating enemies and depriving the army of local intelligence and supplies. This created a predictable world. A soldier knew what was expected of him and knew the rules. This was a form of justice his opponent's armies lacked. But Napoleon's most important innovation in fairness was structural. He created the corps d'armée, or the corps system. Before Napoleon, armies were huge, slow-moving masses controlled by a single commander. Napoleon divided his Grand Armée into smaller, self-sufficient mini-armies of 20,000 to 40,000 men. Each corps had its own infantry, cavalry, artillery, and staff, and could operate independently for days at a time. This system was a revolution in speed and flexibility. Corps could march on separate roads and live off the land more effectively, allowing Napoleon's army to move with a speed that consistently stunned his enemies. But for the individual soldier, it had a different meaning. It meant the chain of command was shorter and more responsive. It meant that each soldier and officer had a clear, unambiguous mission. Napoleon had absolute clarity about his objectives and communicated them simply, which empowered his generals to act decisively when circumstances changed. This combination of strict, universal rules and a clear, decentralized command structure created an environment of radical clarity. A soldier knew his exact mission, he knew the rules of engagement, and he knew that those rules applied to everyone. This wasn't the arbitrary cruelty of the old world. This was a harsh but predictable system. It was a form of brutal fairness that, for the first time, made the common soldier feel like a respected part of a functioning machine, not just a disposable cog. This discipline wasn't about breaking their spirit. It was about focusing their energy and giving them a clear path to victory. Lannes's story and others like it sent a powerful message through the ranks. Your birth doesn't matter here, only your ability. Before the revolution, the overwhelming majority of French officers were aristocrats. A common soldier, no matter how brilliant or courageous, had almost no chance of promotion. Napoleon shattered this world. He famously declared, Every French soldier carries a marshal's baton in his knapsack. And this wasn't just a slogan, it was a reality. The most powerful examples were the men he elevated to the highest ranks. Take Jean Lannes, the son of a merchant who started as a volunteer sergeant major. In the pre-revolutionary world, his path would have been forever capped. But under Napoleon, Lannes' ferocious bravery and tactical genius saw him rise with breathtaking speed. He became a marshal of the empire, a duke, and one of Napoleon's closest and most trusted friends. A man who still addressed the emperor with the informal "tu" of a familiar friend long after Napoleon had been crowned. This wasn't just about the top brass. Napoleon created a system for rewarding valor at every level. In 1802, he established the Légion d'honneur, the Legion of Honor. Unlike previous honors, this was not reserved for nobility or even just for the military. It was a merit-based award for any citizen, soldier or civilian, who demonstrated exceptional service to the nation. The motto was Honneur et Patrie, honor and fatherland. Napoleon understood that soldiers demand glory, distinction, rewards. He would often hold dramatic ceremonies in the field, personally pinning the medal on a soldier's chest in front of their comrades. There are accounts of him pulling a medal from his own coat to award it to a soldier on the spot. One time, when asking a regimental leader to identify his most deserving subordinate, the officer pointed to a drummer. Napoleon promptly bestowed the Legion of Honor upon the drummer, an act that demonstrated his commitment to merit over rank. This system completely rewired a soldier's motivation. Under the old monarchies, a soldier fought for a king who would never know his name. Under Napoleon, he fought for France, for glory, and for a tangible chance at a better life. The brutal discipline and the endless marches were no longer just suffering. They were an investment. They were the price of entry into a system where a stable-hand son like Jean Lannes could become a duke, and a brave grenadier could be decorated by the emperor himself. This transformed the army from a collection of conscripts into a furnace of ambition. Every soldier saw a path forward, and that path was paved with courage and discipline. The final, and perhaps most crucial pillar of Napoleon's system of loyalty was that he himself was a part of it. He wasn't a distant aristocrat directing the battle from a gilded tent miles away. He was a soldier, and he never let his men forget it. This shared experience of hardship was the glue that bonded the army to him with a fanatical devotion. The most legendary example of this came at the Battle of Lodi in 1796. French forces were faced with a heavily defended bridge over the Adda River, swept by Austrian cannon fire. A direct assault seemed suicidal. But as the French artillery was being brought up, Napoleon, a former artillery officer himself, personally stepped in to help sight and aim the cannons, exposing himself to the same enemy fire his men were facing. The French troops, astonished to see their commanding general doing the work of a low-ranking soldier, were electrified. They successfully stormed the bridge, and from that day forward, they gave him the affectionate nickname Le Petit Caporal, the Little Corporal. The name stuck, not as an insult, but as a term of endearment for a leader who was one of them. This was not an isolated incident. Napoleon was constantly in the field, often within range of enemy guns, and had multiple horses shot out from under him. He shared the hardships of his men, marching alongside them, joking with them, and sleeping on the ground just as they did. He was famous for his almost uncanny ability to remember the names and faces of common soldiers he had met, sometimes years prior, asking a sentry about a specific battle they had fought in together. Imagine the psychological impact. The most powerful man in Europe remembers your name and your service. It made his leadership intensely personal. When his army was hungry and undersupplied during his first Italian campaign, he didn't hide the truth. He addressed them directly. Soldiers, you are naked, ill-fed. The government owes you much. It can give you nothing. I will lead you into the most fertile plains in the world. Rich provinces, great cities will be in your power. There you will find honor, glory, and riches. He acknowledged their suffering and framed it as a shared challenge they would overcome together. This built a profound sense of trust. His soldiers knew he understood their hardships because he was living them too. This is what ultimately resolved the paradox of his leadership. The brutal discipline was tolerable because the man enforcing it was subject to its hardships as well. The system wasn't something imposed on them from above. It was a pact of shared struggle, led by a commander who bled with his men. Loyalty wasn't demanded. It was earned in the mud, under fire, and through mutual sacrifice. Napoleon's system of leadership is a masterclass in psychology. It shows how structure, when combined with opportunity and genuine connection, can forge an unbreakable bond. The principles he used to turn a revolutionary army into an empire are still studied today by leaders in every field. So what do you think? Was Napoleon's system a work of genius, or was his success more about personal charisma? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in more breakdowns of history's greatest leaders, make sure to subscribe. So, how did Napoleon inspire loyalty with brutal discipline? He engineered a system where discipline was the price of admission to a world of opportunity and belonging. The three pillars held it all together. The brutal fairness of his system created a predictable world, a stark contrast to the arbitrary nature of the monarchies he fought. The radical meritocracy he championed meant that any soldier could achieve glory, turning the army into a vehicle for ambition. And finally, the bond of shared suffering, cemented by a leader who fought alongside his men, transformed obedience into a deep, personal devotion. The fierce loyalty of the Grande Armée wasn't an accident, and it wasn't a contradiction. It was the direct result of Napoleon's revolutionary design. The discipline wasn't something his soldiers endured to prove their loyalty to him. It was the very framework that gave them a reason to be loyal in the first place. It created a world where their sacrifices mattered, their bravery would be rewarded, and their leaders shared their risks. It wasn't loyalty despite the discipline. It was loyalty because of it.